everyone, and welcome to the Pony Wars project. The origins of all of this lies some 40 years ago, when 4 young men from a small town in northern England met weekly to share an interest in playing with toy soldiers, talking about spaghetti westerns, quoting sketches from Monty Python's Flying Circus, and recreating old western films. The leader of this little gang was the inspirational Ian Beck. Now, Ian was a force of nature, enthusiastic, charismatic, and a rules writer with a knack for tackling unusual subjects and bringing new insights into how we approach them. Under his leadership, we had already reproduced the magnificence of sword and sandal epics in the form of a huge model of the Colosseum, a gigantic chariot racing game. The world of spaghetti westerns had been reproduced faithfully, with a massive scratch-built western gunfight town, populated by stock characters and genre actors, faithfully reproduced with 54mm figures. We'd even started a series of games featuring that stalwart of 20th century male reading, Biggles, and his friends Algie and Ginger. However, the biggest and longest enduring was yet to come. One day, we were presented with a new idea, a game based on all the US cavalry movies you could ever think of, one where cliches and tropes were to be courted, not avoided, a game where anything western was, well, game. And so Pony Wars was born. What made these rules and games played with them so very different? Well, they were rules for multiplayer games in a period of the hobby's history, when war games were universally one opponent versus one other opponent. They were the first set which allowed for cooperative play, with all the participants effectively taking on the rules mechanics rather than each other. They used a simple idea to which anyone could relate and pushed it for all it was worth with a sense of humour and adventure. Everyone who has ever played a game of Pony Wars has walked away with a story to tell, whether of heroic failure or victory against all the odds. Now, our main aim at the time was to use them to stage a spectacular participation game to take around wargame shows, and while it was nice to see the work in print, the actual publication of the rules themselves was not the main object of the exercise. The original set was printed and reprinted by the long-defunct Tabletop Games and proved hugely successful. Ian's novel mechanics, exuberant writing style, and flair for presentation made the whole concept an instant hit. Very sadly, Ian died in a car accident in the mid-1980s. This was a huge loss to his family, his many friends, and the wargames hobby as a whole. His ability to come up with new ideas and concepts and express them clearly and with style has never really been matched. And following that, the remaining members of the team lost the heart to carry on, and the game was put into storage, where it has remained ever since. That is, until now. Here, for the first time in decades, is the original Pony Wars game in all of its 1980s glory. As you'll see, it's a game of its time. The models are true 15mm, mostly from Peter Lang, and they can't stand comparison with today's offerings. But they do have a massive charm, all of their very own.
A better place to start than Fort Laramie. As you can see, this is heavily defended and the starting point of the US troops at the beginning of the game. The colonel is saluting his men as they leave the fort. Unfortunately for all concerned, this is B Troop. It's becoming a given that in any game, B Troop will come back severely mauled, or more commonly will end its days out on the plains, ridden over, ambushed, or shot to a man. Leading B Troop, you can see the stalwarts: Captain Berry, Sergeant Beck, and bringing up the rear, Corporal Bussy. Remember those names, they won't be on the game for long. We have our first view of the enemy. A group of Indian braves impassively lining the hilltop, waiting for the enemy and deciding when and how to act. Brings us on to a homestead. Now here is one of the main objectives for the players. They must contact the settlers and try to get them back to the safety of the fort. Sadly for the players, but very interestingly for gameplay, the settlers will quite often refuse to see sense and just stay put. And as the cavalry cannot just abandon civilians to their fate, they will just have to stay and join them and hope for the best. If all that wasn't bad enough, a herd of bison, including the legendary white bison, have made an appearance, acting as a draw for hostiles from miles around. The housing building is the mission. It's a solid building, often used as a base of operation or mini fortress by beleaguered players. As such, it plays a pivotal role in many games. The saying goes for something completely different. This is the war wagon, heading to make a pickup from the mine. It was in the film. No matter how peripheral, if it appeared in a Western genre movie, it could appear up in... No matter how peripheral, if it appeared in a Western movie, it ended up in Pony Wars somewhere. Here we have. And speaking of the mine, here it is. Yes, more civilians to be evacuated, and probably just as stubborn as everyone else on this game. Anything Western was fair game? Well, I'm sure that many of you of a certain age will recognise it. Well, I am sure that many of you of a certain age will recognise this particular masked man. And yes, he and Tonto do have their own special rules in the set. As you may have gathered, the players don't get things all their own way in this game. And here are a couple of reasons why not. Firstly, you can see a pass occupied by some dismounted braves. There are lots of passes in this game, and unless you have scouts to check them out, you can be in for a very bad day indeed. And then, to add to your woes, every so often one of these smoke signals pops up, which results in a lot of trouble being stored up for the players. By now that you're getting the picture of overstretched players facing increasingly mounting odds, good. But it does get worse. You will inevitably get a wagon train or two or three turning up, and these will want to cross the most dangerous part of the table, and just like any other civilians on the table, won't take kindly to being told what to do by some nice snotty officer in blue. Western B, the other stagecoach. And yes, it is once again the cavalry's job to ensure its safety. This is all too often the end result. An isolated patrol being faced by overwhelming odds, although the presence of a Gatling gun may help to save them, or, as usual, maybe not. And finally, we have the Indian village, a place to be defended by them. And finally, we have the Indian village, a place to be defended by their people and destroyed by the cavalry. Life is brutal on the plains. Or what is a piece of wargaming history? Who knows? We might even take the chance for one last outing once COVID restrictions are lifted, enough for wargame shows to reappear.
Since the original rules fell out of print, we have faced constant requests for them to be made available once more. We finally took the plunge with this in 2020, and the decision was taken at the time to bring the whole thing up to modern production standards. I'm sure that looking at the following pictures, many of you will agree that it's been well worth the effort. The original text, however, has remained unaltered, apart from the correction of a few typos that we missed first time around. The reprinted rules and a full-colour laminated card deck will be made available from autumn 2021 from Baccus. This has only been made possible by the generous and very patient support of subscribers who helped us get this whole project off the ground. Thank you to each and every one of you.
Well, I do hope that you've enjoyed this little tour of the Pony Wars game. I've really enjoyed making it and it's brought back many good memories. But I'm sure you're wondering, what's this got to do with 6mm? Well, the simple answer is that we at Baccus are reproducing everything that you've seen on that game that's been done in 15mm, but in 6. As the following pictures will show you. Enjoy.